circular economy be more than just resource efficiency, more than its clean tech image, and help solve some of society's pressing issues? Welcome to the Circular Future, your access to thought leaders and innovations to help you be a business sustainability champion, even if it's not your core job. I'm your host, Stephanie McLarty, Head of Sustainability at Quantum Lifecycle Partners, your trusted partner in electronics circularity. We have many burning challenges, quite literally, that we are facing these days. Besides climate change, there are crises in housing and affordability and food security, just to name a few. Can a circular economy help? What could its future look like? And how do we make it all happen? With me are two industry juggernauts to help answer these big questions. Joanne St. Godard is Executive Director at Circular Innovation Council, a leading national environmental nonprofit charity. Joanne has 25 years of experience in public policy, design, strategy, and leadership, and she's dedicated to accelerating Canada's transition toward a circular economy. Welcome to the podcast, Joanne.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Glad to be here.
And we have Paul Shorthouse, Managing Director of Circular Economy Leadership Canada, a network of leaders from all industries and sectors focused on the transition to a circular economy in Canada. Paul is one of Canada's leading experts in the emerging circular economy. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
And I will say that both of them are organizing the Canadian Circular Economy Summit, which we will talk about a bit later. But first, let's bring our listeners up to speed on who you are and your backgrounds, and frankly, the things that we may not know about. So Joanne, I'll start with you. What would be two things that the world wouldn't necessarily know about the Circular Innovation Council?
So for those that may have not had the pleasure of doing business with or meeting yet, we've actually been around, even though the name of the organization is quite new. We've been around as an organization, as the Recycling Council of Ontario, for about 4.5 decades. And in that role, we were actually responsible for bringing the public and the private sector together to negotiate our biggest recycling program actually in the globe, certainly in the country, called the Blue Box program. So I think in terms of our legacy, that's how people knew the Recycling Council of Ontario. And for that, we were actually blessed with the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency award back in the day. So that background is actually how and why we became the Circular Innovation Council in June of 2020. At that time, we really recognized that there was an important opportunity to take all of our technical, operational, and policy know-how and expertise over those 4 decades and really join this expanding global community of other organizations around the world that were recognizing the potential and the need for a circular economy. So we made that leap in June of 2020 and truly haven't really looked back.
That is amazing, and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, and Paul, what would be two things that the world wouldn't necessarily know about Circular Economy Leadership Canada?
Yeah, well, maybe the fact that we're a solution space under the umbrella of our broader parent not-for-profit charity known as Generate Canada, which used to be called the Natural Step Canada. And we're one of 5 solution spaces under Generate Canada, including the Canada Plastics Pact, the Nature Investment Hub, the Canadian Alliance for Net Zero Agri-Food, and the Energy Futures Lab. But CELC was launched in 2018 at the G7 Ocean Summit. Formerly, we were known as the Circular Economy Lab in Ontario, which got created in 2016 and evolved into the Circular Economy Leadership Coalition, which was founded by 8 partners, 5 multinationals that are focused on Canada, including Unilever, IKEA Canada, Loblaw, Canadian Tire, and Walmart, and also 3 NGO or policy think tanks, the Smart Prosperity Institute, the National Zero Waste Council, and the Institute for Sustainable Development. And since that time, we've grown to a network of about 70 partner organizations and really focused on advancing the opportunities for bringing a circular economy to Canada.
So both of your organizations have really gone through an evolution over the years. And even for Quantum, I mean, we used to see ourselves as electronics recyclers, and now we very much see ourselves as partners in sustainable electronics lifecycle management. Joanne, can you reflect back to the kinds of conversations that we were having before around this space and where we're at now, where we're going, these trends that you're seeing in the evolution of the circular economy?
Yeah, it's so exciting to see. And I guess one of the benefits of being around long enough is that you can actually backcast and think about, the beginnings of these conversations, which really, as you mentioned, focus on end-of-life management, resource efficiency, resource recovery, recycling. And those are such key pillars of the circular economy. But now that I do backcast, it's really apparent to me, or it's becoming more apparent, that was just a little nub that's grown into this bigger conversation. But it was so important and really, avant-garde of its time. But now we're recognizing that was really focusing on a very small part of the production and the consumption cycle, an important part. But it was about dealing with something at end of life, and really kind of having limited options to do that. The circular economy moves us away from sort of externalities or market failures into shifting markets, shifting economies, redesigning them to be able to think about eliminating waste, not by recycling it, but preventing it, and creating business models, products, systems, thinking about end of life management and recycling from the beginning, and rearranging the market and consumers to support a market that actually prevents it from the onset. So I see folks using their knowledge and their history on recycling, but starting to think more broadly about, as I mentioned, product and consuming in a way that is regenerative, is in lockstep with the limitations of our natural resources, thinking about protecting them, thinking about the biodiversity that lives within them. And I would say the most exciting change that really Paul and I are moving into is away from environmental policy and programs and thinking about economic policy and programs. And that really allows you to think about financial model, business models, taxonomy, really thinking about the heart and soul of what is an economic redesign. But the history is important, and it's really guiding our future.
So, Paul, why do you think we need a circular economy? Joanne's just, brought us into the conversation around it's more than just, waste prevention. It's around like even the economic possibilities. Why do we need a circular economy, and what can it do?
Yeah, the circular economy really looks at how we get the most out of our businesses and our resources and our value chains and the collaboration models that come from that. And it really sparks innovation in terms of how we think differently about how we do business and how we operate within our communities. And the opportunities for things like food security or addressing economic crises in different ways. So it's a job generator. It's an opportunity to be more resilient, both across our supply chains and, with the conversations today, focus so much on things like tariffs and buy local. Circular economy really brings a lot of opportunity to bring some of those business opportunities and investment opportunities into our communities and think about how we create new partnerships with the local players that are part of the value chain.
Joanne, what do you think? What are some of the challenges that we're facing? Paul's brought up about tariffs, which were not really even part of our vocabulary really 6 months ago, and are now front and center, and something that the business community is really concerned about. What are some of the ways that the circular economy can support our societal challenges that we may not think about?
Yeah, I learn more every day, and there's some things I take for granted and I don't think about it in the context of the circular economy. And then yet I discover another opportunity to really apply it and its principles and practices and how it could be a solver for that. some of those examples really lie in the practical things that you think about today, which is, affordability, trying to get insurance now in a world that has climate catastrophes and really expensive insurance policies now that are really paying for that and underpinning it. This is an everyday product that we buy, we need for our cars, our homes. We don't think about how climate change and how a linear economy has caused that now really fundamentally unaffordable product, and how a circular economy can address that. The housing crisis, these days of living in houses that are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet that have all of this unoptimized space. Do we need homes of that size? How should we be building them? How do we think about communities as ecosystems? And are we right sizing the way that we live within, kind of the housing that really suits the boundaries that we have to live within today? Consumerism is just, we really are rethinking the way that we buy products, who we buy them from, how long do they last? Can I repair it? Can I get access to instructions, tools? Do I have a new relationship with the company that I buy from, in the sense that I want them to help me fix it when it breaks down? So I think we're really reconfiguring the way that we think about consumerism and how a circular economy can sort of address some of these affordability and obviously the environmental benefits that come with products that live longer and that allow us to use them longer as well. So I think there's touch points almost every day that I could think about where the circular economy can apply to make our lives more fulsome.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really love about the circular economy is that it makes so much sense in theory, and there's so much opportunity to make it happen in practice, like big or small, within our organizations in terms of how we think about our resources, and down to the personal level in terms of using buy nothing groups or refilleries for our cleaning products and more. It's like really rooted in action as well. And I know that in terms of action, you have the Circular Economy Summit. The last one was 2 years ago. I was fortunate to be there. The next one is coming up in April. But I think, first of all, what's really interesting about the summit is the fact that you two have collaborated together to make this summit happen. So, Paul, why did you choose to collaborate to make the summit happen in the first place?
Yeah, a key success factor really for the circular economy is collaboration, and collaboration across value chains and breaking down silos and finding new opportunities to, create synergies. So, we are two of the leading national organizations or networks that are focused on advancing a circular economy in Canada, and bringing together diverse stakeholders and partners through our various projects and work streams and focus areas on topics like agri-food and construction and finance and reuse and repair and policy and procurement. These are all areas that between our two organizations we're looking to focus on and tackle. And while the opportunities for a circular economy in Canada are big, we figured the impact we could have by coming together and collaborating in terms of hosting and co-hosting the Circular Economy Summit would be greater than if we each went it alone. And there's certainly lots of work to do. So by bringing our respective partners and work streams together under the Canadian Circular Economy Summit, it allowed us to identify sort of the needs and the gaps for advancing a circular economy in Canada. And it led to the release of a comprehensive circular economy action plan for Canada, which we released in 2023 after our first summit. And it was really developed through the input from our partners and our stakeholders at the summit, but also from all the work we've been doing over the last few years. And this action plan is structured around sort of 5 critical enablers to the circular economy: information, collaboration, as I mentioned, policy, innovation, and investment. And it focuses on 30 short-term actions, which give our organization sort of focus. And so we've been working together on a few of these and leading on others, but also identifying within the action plan areas where others need to step up and lead some of these activities and opportunities.
Yeah, I really like how the action plan is laid out, because it's got the 10-year horizon, like the long-term vision, but then it's got the 2-year action plan. It's rooted in that action that we speak of. Paul, could you speak to maybe a couple of those 30 actions that you've made significant progress on since the last summit?
Sure, yeah, and there's a lot, and maybe Joe can also add a few from her perspective. But we've been, as I mentioned, collaborating on a few with Circular Innovation Council, and then leading on a few ourselves. So just a couple of examples: we've been working with the finance sector in Canada, so with leading banks, investors, and the insurance community to better understand the opportunity for mobilizing capital to support circular economy businesses and investing in projects and infrastructure, and understanding what are some of the barriers that are preventing capital from flowing into those areas. So we've been undertaking research with the finance sector community. We have a circular finance work stream, and developed a guidance document that's for the banks and other investors to better understand how to move finance into this sector. So that's, as I mentioned, one of the critical enablers around finance. Another space, we've been working with governments at all levels. So through our policy incubator, bringing the federal, provincial, local governments together to better understand how to measure and standardize approaches for measurement around circular economy.
Amazing. And Joanne, what would be a couple of the projects that you're really excited about or proud of?
So much going on. I think to highlight a few things, we've been really focused as an organization to try to understand sort of what the market failures, if I can call them, what are the market barriers and limitations in terms of creating circular systems. And we've chosen two areas where we've brought, in the spirit of collaboration, one of our key pillars, we've brought maybe either competitors in an industry that otherwise wouldn't work together on solving problems, or maybe a public-private partnership, like minds together to try to address a barrier. We did that trying to address single-use plastics with a new reuse collaborative model that we introduced in Ottawa in the fall. And this is where actually the grocer industry, who would otherwise are fierce competitors, would come together to see, hey, where could we actually share a container in a system in a place-based way and actually circulate it amongst us, replacing single-use plastics, have it, sanitized and moved, and then actually refilled. And after 6 months of collaborating with them, they agreed on a places in store where they could share reuse containers and then offer those up to the neighboring restaurants. So now we're creating a circular system where there would have been a linear one, and bringing maybe unlikely bedfellows together. So those pilots are really important to us. We've done another one sort of still shaping it at a community level, where we are trying to build organics collection and edible food collection systems together for restaurants, any kind of food service industry you can think of that would otherwise just be putting their organics in the disposal because it's too expensive to have an organics collection, or they don't know where to send edible food. And we built systems with them as neighborhoods to be able to gather this up, build economies of scale, building service models that are cheaper than actually disposal. So a couple of end of life options there in our pilots, which help us prove out concepts. Get our, we can roll up our sleeves and think through and actually experience all of those barriers, and then think through how to problem solve with our collaborators to get over them. And those have just given us incredible learnings. And the other things that we're doing is thinking about whole sectors. So how does Canadian small to medium-sized businesses, they make up 45% of our GDP. They also create 50% of our waste and 50% of our carbon emissions, but they're small and they don't have a lot of capacity to even understand what a circular economy is, or maybe think through how they can participate in it. And so we're building SME hubs, which are going to be full of resources for small to medium-sized enterprises to better understand the economic opportunities of a circular economy and how they can participate as well. So those resources are really important. And I would say one final a really important piece of work for our organization in particular, Paul mentioned it, is procurement. So governments own 16% of the country's GDP. Never more important now, as we're thinking about tariffs, this buy Canadian sentiment that we are now, really thinking about, and really building resiliency in our economies around the threat of tariffs. But recognizing that, in fact, that procurement power that governments have to tap into and to accelerate the circular economy, to prefer Canadian-made, low-carbon, low-waste goods as a Kickstarter, as our abilities to really move us in that direction quickly, and meet their environmental and economic and social goals all at the same time. So we've been working in the space of public procurement for some time now, and I'm happy to say that we've really made a lot of inroads in years, and in fact, it takes a lot of good space in our summit agenda.
Well, that's a great segue into this year's summit. Clearly, you have been busy since the last summit in 2023. And I want you to know I got goosebumps 3 times hearing about the progress that you've made in these areas, which are really meaningful to people's lives and to businesses. And there's so much win-win opportunities. So let's dive into this year's summit. And I should note, Quantum is a sponsor of this year's summit. Joanne, what is this year's summit all about? Walk us through, key items in the agenda and really what we can expect.
Yeah, we're really getting excited. We started with the summit in 2023 in Toronto, and really came together to say, hey, let's see if people agree that there's such a, that this is a really important time for us to double down on our beliefs in the circular economy and its abilities. And the response, 400 people, a waiting list of delegations, incredibly rich and very dense agenda where we covered all kinds of topics, came out of that with a really practical action plan that we are so proud of. And so we came back together and said, let's do it again. And 2025 in Montreal seemed like the place to go. There's so many amazing things happening in Quebec, an incredible showcasing of Canadian innovation and really community abilities that are happening in Quebec. So no better place to hold it than Montreal. And we're doubling down. We're literally opening up another 450 seats. So we're hoping for a cast of 900 to come, and we're almost there, 80% sold out today. And an incredible response by both the public and the private sector to support us. And again, another 2.5 days, a little bit longer. So we're giving people a little bit more in our agenda in terms of time and availability, adding on some tours, which we didn't have in 2023. But again, for those that are coming and those that haven't yet registered, you're going to see a very rich agenda with all of the cross-cutting issues and tools that we've talked about in this podcast and in our action plan. And then I would say a little something for everybody. And a lot of great, incredible, bright minds in other jurisdictions that are going to bring all of their rich experiences and impart their knowledge in us. And then I think the most important part for me is just to take stock of the Canadian innovations that have happened between 2023 and 2025. It's incredible how much is going on across the country. And sometimes we forget, we keep pushing and pushing, but we forget to just take stock of how far we've come. And that's also equally energizing. So we're going to do a little bit of that and celebrating at the 2025 summit as well.
I totally agree. When we're in it and doing it, it's important to pause and reflect and celebrate on all the progress that's been made. And we don't often do that enough. Paul, what are you most excited about for this agenda and specifically how it's going to be different than last time?
Yeah, we were really focused on designing an event that's interactive and outcome focused. So we don't just want to have talking heads on stage. We really want to have the audience and the stakeholders and the delegates all interacting with each other. And so we're trying to create an agenda that allows for a lot of that. So bringing our broad network of stakeholders from across Canada together to showcase leadership and inspire through action and showcase best practices and the innovation that's happening across Canada. So we've designed, workshops and networking opportunities and lounge spaces and a range of different interactive business to business type activities, business to government and government to government. As Joanne mentioned, we're using the framework of the action plan, so the 5 critical enablers to help guide our program development. And we've also placed a focus on how the circular economy can help us tackle some of Canada's biggest challenges. from affordability to housing to climate change or productivity issues. So that has helped, I think, to bring a new and sort of expanded focus to 2025. And we have 130 speakers from across Canada and some international thought leaders coming already confirmed. 40 different sessions, like I mentioned, with workshops and plenaries and breakouts, and just really excited to be doing it with our Quebec partners. So much innovation and cool things happening in that ecosystem. So we'll be showcasing, a lot of what's happening across the Quebec space. But we're also partnering with the Canada Plastics Pact, who will be hosting their partner summit within our broader event. So bringing their 100 and so organizations together, and also Fashion Takes Action, who are going to be hosting a textiles and apparel track. So focused on the latest in what's happening on circularity in fashion and textiles, and groups like H&M and The Gap and others that will be participating in that. And then Joanne touched on it, but we're doing some half-day site tours as well on the third day, so April 17th, which is going to different themes, one on construction, one on agri-food, one on textiles, corporate leadership one going to IKEA, and resource recovery going to see GFL's new material recovery facility, and to Laverne. We'll get a behind the scenes look at Cirque du Soleil and their costume department as part of the textiles tour. So lots of cool stuff happening. I think also a construction material reuse center among several of the stops. So each tour has, I think, 2 stops, but just excited to, expand kind of not just the scope and the size of the audience and the delegates, but still try and keep that outcome focused by driving towards, impact and showcasing real examples of what's happening kind of in the Quebec ecosystem.
Wow. Joanne, did you want to add something on to that?
No, I just when we start rattling all the agenda off, I do appreciate how what we've created. I'm pretty proud and excited about it.
Well, no kidding. I've heard you use the term rich agenda and cool stuff. So this is a perfect time to move into our how-to section, where I get to ask you how-to questions. And the first one is really how to make the most of a rich agenda with cool stuff, how to make the most out of this conference. Paul, what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I say plan things in advance to get the most out of it. So go online and check out the agenda and plan out your calendar if you're planning to come, in terms of all the different sessions and workshops and receptions. And if you're not able to take in all the ones you want, bring a friend or a colleague from your organization. We have a great event app called Swap Card that will be launching very soon, that allows people to plan out their calendars, but also to reach out and schedule one-on-one meetings with some of the 950 delegates that will be there. So you can really use that as a matchmaking tool for people you'd like to connect with. Check out the site tours that I was mentioning on the third day. Those will be going live in the next couple of weeks, where you can register for those. And definitely reach out to myself or Joanne if you have questions. We're doing a ton of curated activities for partners and for delegates. So we really want the event to bring value for all of our participants, and happy to support where we can.
I remember that the 2023 summit was the first time that I'd ever used a conference app quite like that. Like, it was so useful in finding out where things were and connecting. And so, yeah, I'm sure like leverage the app for all of its opportunities. Okay, next one. Joanne, over to you. One of the challenges with conferences is that it's so exciting during the actual conference. You make a lot of great connections, have great conversations, but then you go back to your homes and your offices, and sometimes it's really hard to keep those connections and those conversations alive. Do you have any suggestions on how we do that?
Yeah, it's all of what you said is very, very true. I think in addition to all the practical ways to optimize your time at the summit, we really want our delegates to recognize that they're coming to something that is frontiering, that they're part of something new, they're part of change, they have a role to play. And we don't sit around for 2.5 days and talk about what we can't do. We sit around and participate very actively on what can be done and what should be done. So we want our delegates to really come with that attitude, and to look at this rich agenda that we've created and saying these 2 things or these 3 things, I really care about these things, or this really resonates with me, or this is right in line with what I want to get done at work or my organization. And so, I would say the advice I would give is consider the summit a place to start working on those things you care about, but only a start. So you meet the people that, are your comrades that want to work on this issue, that are working on this issue. Don't be shy. If you find an expert that's further along in their thinking, connect with them, stay connected with them. And I would say, last but not least, it's a regroup for Paul and I. We're going to keep implementing the actions of that action plan. We drafted it for 10 years for a reason. So we're not going to stop after 2. So get involved in our 2 organizations, support the work that we're doing, come to us with new ideas or challenges that you may be having that you can't overcome, and leverage the networks that we've been able to assemble over the years and decades that we've been working. So it's a starting point. It's not a finish point. So we really welcome everybody to think about it like that, and to really leverage what we've put together.
I love that. It's a starting point. It's not the finish point. That's a great perspective. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question, how to find out more about the summit and to register. Paul, how do we do that?
Yeah, just go online to circulareconomysummit.ca to find all the details about the agenda and the site tours and our speakers and more information on registration, etc.
Perfect. We'll also link it in the show notes as well. I've so much enjoyed this conversation, and a couple of things I've really taken away are, Joanne, something you said around building systems as neighborhoods. I mean, that really resonated with me. And also thinking about what you can do rather than what you can't do, focusing on the possibility. And the circular economy is all about possibility and what we create it to be. What would you leave the listeners with in terms of one last piece of advice, whether it's about the summit or just in general about the circular economy? Joanne, I'll start with you. What's your piece of advice?
It's pretty trying times right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, everyone keeps using the word unprecedented. I think that's about right. Every day you wake up to a new surprise, and you may feel a little overwhelmed. I certainly do at times, and wondering how do I navigate in what I do for a living or as a person. I think what we want is for everyone to come to the summit, maybe not thinking about either role in their job or their role as a government policymaker, but recognizing that as individuals, we're all part of the system and we're all part of the circular economy. So as individuals, we have an incredibly important role to play. A role may be different between us, but that all of us have a contribution to make. And maybe I would even say in these times, an obligation to make it. So I know it can be very overwhelming, but we're moving into a space of can do, should do, will do. And so we really want to unlock the innovations. Everyone's got an idea of how to solve a problem. Bring those ideas to us. So I would say take a hold of maybe the uncertainty that's in front of us today, and think about when you come to the summit that you can place that down for a couple of days and think about, the next frontier and how you're going to be part of that.
Love that. Be a contribution for moving forward. Yeah, love that. Paul, what about you?
I would just say, reflecting back on what Joe said at the beginning of this conversation, that the circular economy is not about just waste. It's so much more than that. It's about redesigning our supply chains and tackling some of our biggest environmental and economic and social issues at the same time. And, as we were saying, seeing some of these threats around tariffs and the sentiment around buy local, the circular economy, in my mind, really has a lot to offer. And I think advancing a circular economy in Canada is about collaboration and tackling our barriers together. So that's where the summit provides that platform really to inspire, provide new ideas. It's designed to bring new tools and resources to the table that people can bring back to their organizations or within their day-to-day jobs, as well as new contacts and relationships to help advance their own strategic priorities. So lots to come out of that. And we like to say, be there or be square. So
be there or be square. I love it. Well, you can be part of so much more by being there. And I also will say it's so great to be with people, to be face to face with people once in a while. You get so much done too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and for creating this space, creating the platform for us all to come together.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
And remember, if you're looking for a partner to help you repair, reuse, and recycle your electronics, we'd love to chat. Head on over to quantumlifecycle.com and contact us. This is a Quantum Lifecycle podcast, and the producer is Sanjay Trivedi. Thank you for being a circular future champion in your company and beyond. Logging off.